You are not holding on because of love. You are holding on because you believe that if they finally choose you, it will prove you are enough. That is the hook. Not the person. Not even the history. The hook is the verdict you have granted them the power to deliver. You let their yes become a form of redemption. You let their certainty stand in for your own. So letting go no longer feels like losing a person. It feels like losing your final chance to be confirmed. That is why you stay in suffering longer than logic would allow. Because this was never just attachment. It became judgment, identity, salvation. And once your self-worth is tied to their answer, detachment stops feeling like freedom. It feels like exile. Stop applying for permission to be worthy. Because the longer you wait for their decision, the longer your life remains suspended under an authority they never deserved. You know the place, the gray zone, the hallway. No commitment, no clean clarity, no real arrival. Just enough warmth to keep you waiting. A message here, a soft moment there, a little tenderness after distance. A flicker of hope after silence. So you begin studying everything. Every emoji, every delay, every punctuation mark, every shift in tone. Every silence starts to feel like evidence. Every reply becomes a clue. You turn a human being into a code you are desperate to break, and the cost does not arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly. A glance at your phone before sleep, a drop in your chest when they do not answer, a distracted mind at work, a fractured presence during dinner, a life interrupted by possibility. That is how it drains you. Not through one heartbreak, through 1,000 tiny withdrawals. You are exhausted because you are not living. You are monitoring, interpreting, auditioning, waiting in a room decorated by your own fantasy. And the cruelest part is this: the more uncertain they become, the more your nervous system decides their next move will determine your peace. That is not love growing. That is a life leaking away one notification at a time. You are not always attached to the person. You are attached to the maybe. Maybe they care. Maybe they are scared. Maybe timing is wrong. Maybe one more message will change everything. That is what makes it powerful. Craving is rarely built through consistency. It is built through intermittent reward. A message after long silence. Warmth after coldness. Attention after absence. This is the same mechanism that keeps gamblers pulling the lever one more time. Not certainty, uncertainty. The next spin might redeem the whole story. The next reply might explain the distance. The next moment might justify the waiting. So your brain starts investing in possibility instead of pattern. And fantasy becomes dangerous because fantasy never has to commit. It never has to clarify. It never has to become consistent. It never has to respect you. It remains perfect because it remains unfinished. That is why ambiguity can feel more addictive than love. Love asks for reality. Ambiguity survives on imagination. And where self-worth is weak, maybe becomes a drug. You keep paying with time, attention, sleep, dignity, and emotional stability. Stop financing a ghost, because the future you are attached to often exists only in the theater of your hope. Marcus Aurelius understood a brutal truth. A person cannot be sovereign if the final verdict over their worth lies in someone else's hand. He lived through betrayal, war, plague, loss, instability. He knew uncertainty intimately, and still he refused to outsource his soul. That is Stoic weight, not numbness. Not pretending attachment does not hurt, but refusing to make another person the judge of your value. You have no jurisdiction over their readiness, no jurisdiction over their confusion, no jurisdiction over their wounds, their inconsistency, or their fear. You do not control their timing. You do not control their clarity. You do not control whether they are capable of real love, but you do have jurisdiction over your own worth. That is where authority must return. A sovereign person stops asking, "Will they choose me?" and starts asking, Why did I hand my throne to someone who is not even sure they want to stay? That question changes everything, because it breaks the spell. It returns the verdict to its rightful owner, you. Stoicism begins with reality. Not maybe, not what if, not the most flattering interpretation of someone's behavior. Reality. Look at the pattern, not the potential. Is there consistency? Is there mutual effort? Is there clarity that calms your nervous system? Is there direction? Or are you surviving on crumbs and calling it depth? Remember this line: warmth is not commitment. Attention is not love. Intensity is not devotion. Chemistry is not character. If a connection requires you to shrink, decode, wait, guess, monitor, and bargain with your own dignity, it is not romance. It is poor emotional hygiene. And there are two kinds of pain here. Clean pain is grief. It hurts once. It tells the truth. It ends. There's the illusion. It leaves an honest wound. And honest wounds heal. Dirty pain is ambiguity. It hurts, then repeats. It opens hope, then removes ground. It reactivates the wound every time possibility returns. That is why dirty pain lasts so long, because it never resolves. It keeps you suspended between funeral and fantasy. Stoicism asks a colder question. Which pain tells the truth? Because you cannot build a stable life on someone else's hesitation. You cannot build peace on mixed signals. You cannot build dignity in a hallway. So choose carefully. Choose the clean pain of walking away over the dirty pain of remaining somewhere that was never designed to become home. Picture it. Amber sunset. A long stone hallway. At the end, a heavy door left half open. Not open enough to enter. Not closed enough to mourn. And that is what destroys you. Not the slammed door. The half-open one. Because a slammed door gives grief, but a half-open door gives hope, and hope in the wrong place becomes a prison. You remain standing there, not because it is home, because it postpones the funeral. A hallway is a place of transit, not a life, not a destination, not a sanctuary. Yet people build entire emotional worlds inside hallways, waiting for uncertainty to become devotion. Do not wait for them to shut the door. Have the dignity to close it from your side. Not out of anger, out of sacred duty to your own peace. Because some doors do not need one more sign. They need a decision. You do not need more analysis. You need a protocol. 1. Stop paying for maybe. Ambiguity is an expense you can no longer afford. Every reread of an old text, every late-night check, every what did they mean is a leak in your power. Close the leak. Attention is currency. Stop spending it where reality is absent. 2. No, contact is first aid. This is not revenge. It is first aid for the nervous system. If contact triggers craving, collapse, fantasy, or relapse into waiting, then it is not neutral. It is harm. Remove the pathways that keep delivering hope and disappointment into the same body. Distance is not cruelty. Sometimes it is surgery. 3. Build evidence, not hope. You do not move on through thought alone. You move on through structure. 1 act for the body. 1 act for the mind. 1 act for the craft. Walk. Train. Read. Write. Work. Sleep on time. Journal the truth, not the fantasy. Self-worth returns through evidence, through repeated proof that you can choose yourself, even when part of you still wants to go back to the hallway. That is how dignity re-enters the body. Not through declarations, through repetition. Missing them is not a command. Craving is not wisdom. Hope is not proof. You do not need to hate them to leave. You only need to love your own time more than the fantasy that has been consuming it. Stop auditioning for the unsure. Stop asking ambiguity to become destiny. Choose the clean pain. Grieve honestly. Close the door. Withdraw your worth from their verdict. Rebuild your life on the evidence of your own discipline. And one day the hallway will no longer feel like fate. It will feel like a place you once stood in for too long. A corridor, a delay, a lesson, not your home. If these words found the silence in you, we will meet again on the next road.